Dear senior colleague and friend Shemim Hassan, District Congress Committee President Shinayatingira Sanu, former MLA Sharachandra Prasad, and B.S. Shiju, who is doing such a wonderful job of running the Rajiv Gandhi Institute for Development Studies, members of the media, friends. I hope that covers everyone. It's a real honor for me to address you all. Mr. Hassan very graciously allowed me to take his slot because unfortunately I have to catch the last flight to Delhi this evening since Parliament resumes tomorrow morning, and that flight is at 7 o'clock, so I have to leave here not later than another 10 or 15 minutes. So with Swami Agniveshji's permission, having invited him to come here, I feel very guilty to miss his speech, but I'm sure all our media friends will ensure that I get a chance to hear the echoes of his speech, even if I'm not able to hear the whole speech. I do want to say that the topic before us is timely and painful, and I want to commend the Rajiv Gandhi Institute for having taken the initiative to assemble us all together to discuss this topic. And as Rameshji said, there could be no better principal speaker than Swami Agnivesh, who has stood up against hatred for such a long time, decades now. He was telling me that on the 21st of September he will turn 79. I told him he doesn't look it. His face is that of a young man, but I think what keeps him young is the passion for justice and the passion for doing the right thing and saying the right thing, which should animate all of us in public life. What Swami Agnivesh has stood for over the years has ranged from the abolition of bonded labor, as Ramesh Channatala reminded us, to today fighting the forces of communalism in our country. And you know, it's very interesting. The whole phenomenon of communalism has risen once again in the last quarter of a century or so in ways that people like Mr. Hassan and Ramesh and I would never have expected when we were young men. I still remember in the 80s when M.J. Akbar started writing articles about the communal menace in the mid-80s. And he was at one time a friend of mine, so I remember a lunch with him in Calcutta when I was visiting from my service to the UN. And I said, Akbar, why are you going on and on about communalism? This issue is over. The secular battle has been won. We have all grown up in a secular India. It's time for us now to focus on other challenges, the economy, the transformation of our country, making India ready for the 21st century. And I remember him saying to me, I'm sorry, you're wrong. The single most important issue that's coming up is the rise of the BJP. At that point, there are 2 seats in Parliament. He said they are a dangerous party. They stand for the worst communal instincts in this country. And he said they are the story we have to write because communal violence can damage this country unrecognizably. And the same M.J. Akbar 3 decades later joined the very people he was warning me against. But that's a footnote. I think the important realization that I had then was then confirmed by the violence that started in our country in the late 80s with the so-called Ram Shila Pujan movement, when they were baking bricks across villages in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, in order to take them to Ayodhya to build a temple. A number of riots took place over the Ram Shila Pujan. I myself wrote a novel, Riot, Malayalathil Kalabam, the Venul Kana Sadikim. Riot was set at that period and at that time. And then, of course, we had the destruction of the Babri Masjid, after which we know that the communal atmosphere in our country has never been the same. But what has qualitatively changed, I'm sorry to say, is the rise to power of the BJP with the election of Narendra Modi in 2014. And I say this very advisedly because I know that my good friends on the other side of the parliamentary aisle will say that this is nonsense, there is no evidence for it, the Congress MPs are all fear-mongering and hate-mongering. But I'm sorry, they are wrong. I'll just give you a few examples of the hatred and intolerance that has been spewed in recent years, and which is the subject of the title of today's seminar. And then you will understand why it's so important to stand up against it. We all know, for example, that after the ascent of the BJP to power in Delhi, and subsequently their rise to power in 21 of our 29 states, we have seen a widespread rise in incidents of communal violence. And I am quoting the figures of the Ministry of Home Affairs of the BJP government. These are not my numbers, these are not my figures or my concerns. These are concerns we all share on the basis of government data. Let me tell you, for example, that we have had in this country 2,920 incidents of communal violence in the last 4 years. 2,920 according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, in which 389 people were killed and 8,890 injured. This is just in the last 4 years. There has been a dramatic explosion of incidents linked to cow vigilantism. What is cow vigilantism? You know that Gau Rakshak societies have sprung up overnight pretty much everywhere across northern India, and in the name of protecting the cow, they're assaulting people, and the people are almost invariably Muslims, in some cases Dalits. And it is striking that the government of India says that in the whole of independent India's history, 70 incidents of cow vigilantism or violence linked to cow protection have been recorded. Of those 70 incidents, 97%, that is 68 out of 70 incidents, took place in the last 4 years under BJP rule. I could rest my case there. The figures from the government itself, submitted to Parliament by the Ministry of Home Affairs in response to questions some of us have asked. These answers tell you how bad the picture is. So 97% of all the cow vigilante incidents in the last 70 years since independence have taken place in the last 4 years. Why is this? I mean, no government surely has any interest in presiding over a decline in law and order. No government, after the horrors of 2002 in Gujarat, when over 1,000 people were killed, again according to the government's own figures, should want to get a reputation for fiddling while the country burns. So we would assume that the government does not want to see these things happening. But what is happening is that the government is reluctant to stop it. The government has taken a view that if it looks the other way, it is not the government's problem. And that, unfortunately, has empowered the very people who are inclined to conduct such acts of violence, because nothing empowers you more than the perception that those in power do not object to what you are doing. In America, there is a high school shooting. President Obama is on television within 15 minutes, no longer President Obama, he was there for 8 years. Within 15 minutes, he was there condemning the incident, sharing the grief of the families, calling for remedial measures, and in every respect trying to reassure the public that the president cared about this kind of thing because it touches the hearts and souls of everybody. That is true leadership. In India, what have we seen during every one of these 68 incidents in the last 4 years? We have seen a silent Prime Minister. Not once has he done an Obama. Not once has he stood up immediately after such an incident and said to the nation, this is wrong, I condemn it, it should not happen, and if these people who are doing it claim to be my followers, I urge them to desist. It would have been such a simple, powerful message. But not once. He had 68 opportunities in the last 4 years. He has not taken a single opportunity to actually reassure the nation, condemn the killers, and to say to those victims, in one case the father of an Indian Air Force Havildar, in one case the family of a 15-year-old boy, he has not said to them, I share your pain, I'm sorry, this should not have happened. So the perception that goes out is that if this happens, the Prime Minister doesn't mind. The perception that goes out is that if these crimes occur, that at the end of the day, many people will get away with them. And of course that should not be the case. We have a justice system, we have police, we have courts. People should be tried, should be conducted. Fast-track courts were invented for this purpose. But by that time the damage is done, the people are gone. What does this violence do to the nature of our country? What sort of tragic story hides behind each of these figures I've given you, whether it's 3,200 and whatever number of incidents, 389 people killed, their lives lost, 389 families suffering the grief of mourning. Think about the humanity behind this, and then you understand why it is so important to stand up against it. But the title rightly says, speak out or stand up against hatred. It is not only violence that we must condemn. Violence is definitely condemnable, and we must deal with it. But it is also intolerance, because intolerance is what enables the violence. And how does the intolerance come? It comes from attitudes that once again start at the very top. I ask you, why does our Prime Minister, who wears all sorts of outlandish headgear wherever he goes around the country, around the world, why does he always refuse to wear a Muslim skull cap? You've seen him in hilarious sort of Naga headdress with feathers, and you've seen him in various kinds of extraordinary outfits, which is the right thing for a Prime Minister to do. Indira Gandhi has also been photographed wearing various kinds of costumes. But he still always says no to one. Why does he refuse to wear green? It's a color that he says is identified with Muslim appeasement. What kind of talk is this? I remember when Rahul Gandhi was the vice president of the party, Narendra Modi in his campaign speeches would always refer to him as the princeling. And while speaking in Hindi, he never used the Hindi word Rajkumar. He didn't say that Rahul Gandhi is a Rajkumar of the party. He called him Shehzada. A Shehzada is an Urdu Persian word, and therefore the immediate opportunity to tie Rahul Gandhi to Muslim appeasement by using a Muslim term. Or if he refers to people like the then Pakistani former dictator General Musharraf, or to the Congress Party President's political advisor Ahmed Patel, he would say Mia Musharraf, and a few sentences later Mia Patel, Mia Ahmed Patel, and the same connections were to be drawn. Now this kind of overt bias coming from somebody who occupies the highest office of the land is bad enough, but at least it's only subtle signaling. Only subtle signaling, because the signaling is there implicit in the words, but nothing overtly hateful is being said. But then you have his own ministers. You have a minister who says that this country can be divided into two kinds of people. I'm almost embarrassed to use the bad language, but she says Ramzadeh and Haramzadeh, which means devotees of Ram or bastards. So everybody who is not a Ram Bhakt is, in her definition, a bastard. Does the Prime Minister demand her resignation from the Council of Ministers? No. We have another minister who says that everybody who disagrees with us and disagrees with the Prime Minister should go to Pakistan. Why Pakistan? If you want to send your critics far away, why don't you suggest Canada? No, you suggest Pakistan because, again, you want to tarnish them with what you consider the worst crime, which is, again, quote-unquote, Muslim appeasement. Is that gentleman still a minister in the Council of Ministers? Yes, he is. You have a leading parliamentarian in the Lok Sabha saying that he wants on January 30th to see all the statues of Mahatma Gandhi replaced by statues to Nathuram Godse. This is somebody who has been invited by the BJP to chair parliamentary committees and to lead the ruling party in debates in the Lok Sabha. Has that practice stopped? No, he still continues. So what is the message you get from all of these examples? You get the message that there is a certain kind of what the Americans call dog whistles. You know, when you whistle, your dog recognizes that particular whistle and comes to you or fetches something or does what that whistle is to convey. Here is a dog whistle that is understood by the bigots, the minority bashers, the Muslim haters, as part of a coded signal that they should get, they should understand, and on the basis of that signal, they understand the message of hatred that is being disseminated. Others may listen to speeches about the economic development of Gujarat, or hear about all these various slogans that the Prime Minister so artfully offers us. Stand up India, digital India, make in India, sit down India, all of that is there. But the fact is that you also have to listen to the dog whistles, because that's where the hatred starts. And hatred is spread insidiously. It is spread through words and through the lack of words. It is spread through outright statements like the ministers I quoted, and it is also spread by gestures. We had, in that tragic incident I referred to, when Mohammed Akhlaq, the father of an Indian Air Force Havildar, was murdered outside his own home, the person who led the mob that committed the murder died of natural causes a few months later, and before his cremation, his local MP, who happened to be a minister of the central government, came and draped an Indian flag on the man who led the mob. What kind of signal does that convey? Another minister has garlanded 7 or 8 people accused and convicted by a lower court of mob lynching. He says they had been freed on bail and they are appealing, and therefore he felt that they deserved his support, but that he regrets garlanding them now. Too late, the damage is done. Convicted mob lynchers have been garlanded by a minister. Now, these are the kinds of signals, words and gestures that are spread around the country. We have to understand that when we speak about standing up against hatred, the job is an immense one, because the hatred is being encouraged from the very top. I have to say that Swamiji's presence here is particularly important on this issue, and I hope that he will speak not only to the kinds of points that Rameshji and I, and I'm sure M.M. Hassan, will raise, but that he will also speak as a Swami, because I have, as you know, just recently published a book called Why I'm a Hindu. But he is not just a Hindu, he's a Swami. He is somebody who has studied the ancient texts, who understands the principles of the faith, who embodies and incarnates the values of Hinduism in his own person. And as a Swami, I'm sure he will tell us that hatred is something that has no place in the Hindu faith. That the Hindu faith has always, of course, particularly with a strong Buddhist and Jain influence going back over 2,000 years, it has adopted ahimsa as a profound credo. It has taught very broadly a very important lesson. That was, and the president of the Arya Samaj, of the International Arya Samaj. So anyway, he has taught us a lesson, and he will speak to you all himself. But I was going back to Swami Vivekananda, who, in speaking to the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893, made those historic addresses. He had actually been asked to come and speak once for 5 minutes. His speech was so brilliant and he got so much applause that they kept calling him back, and he ended up making 5 speeches at the same World Parliament of Religions. And in one of those speeches, I think it was the very first one, he said, "I am proud to stand in front of you to speak for a religion that has taught the world not just tolerance, but acceptance." Now, I read that phrase when I was a teenager, and it has stayed with me ever since. It's a profoundly important phrase for all of us who claim to be Hindu. Because what was he saying? Tolerance is what everyone thinks is a virtue. We all went to school and studied in our textbooks that a tolerant king is a good king, because a king who tolerates people who think otherwise, tolerance is a virtue. I'm not saying it's not a virtue, it is a virtue. But if you really think about it, as Swami Vivekananda has, tolerance is basically a rather patronizing idea. Because what it says is, I believe I have the truth, you are in error, but I will magnanimously indulge you in your right to be wrong. Whereas acceptance is something much more. Acceptance is you're saying, I believe I have the truth. You believe you have the truth. I will respect your truth. Please respect my truth. That is the basis of Hinduism as Swami Vivekananda described it. That is certainly the Hinduism practiced by Swami Agnivesh and by Hindus like myself. And there are many of us in the Congress party who are quite proud to say we are Hindus, but we are Hindus in the Vivekananda tradition and not in the Savarkar-Golwalkar tradition that the BJP celebrates today. They, unfortunately, have come up as votaries of a doctrine called Hindutva, which actually has nothing to do with Hinduism. Hindutva's roots in the 1920s were in a certain current of modern European thought, which gave us Mussolini in Italy, which gave us Hitler in Germany, which a decade later gave us Franco in Spain and Gaetano in Portugal. And that is a certain kind of thought that saw a great virtue in racial pride, in the creation of a strong and militarized state in alliance with corporate power that would ensure, with one voice and one discipline, a nation marching forward in progress, and often by crushing dissent within and enemies outside. That was the logic of what became known as fascism. Those who followed similar strains of thinking in many countries all started writing in the 1920s. And our dear friend Mr. Savarkar, whose portrait now hangs in Parliament opposite Mahatma Gandhi's, which is a thought that makes many of us choke. Savarkar wrote Hindutva in 1922, republished it in 23 with some edits, and his statements are very clear. He said that Hindutva for him is much more than just the Hindu religion. He's not a terribly religious man himself, he said. And what is interesting is that even though we all think of Hindus as a people, he describes Hindus as a race. And he uses the same language of racial pride that the European fascists used in the 1920s. So this racial pride obviously comes at the expense of others. There is no room for acceptance of difference, such as Vivekananda preached, because acceptance of difference shows a capacity to respect people who are different from you, who look different from you, who think different from you, who dress and eat differently from you, speak differently from you, behave differently from you, and you still respect them. That is the essence. And that essence is not available if you want to define an other with a capital O, ostracize the other, condemn the other, and in many cases use violence against the other. That, to my mind, is not just not Hinduism, it is anti-Hindu. And that's why I am so disappointed not to listen to Swami Agnivesh myself, because I wanted to hear him say it. I can see my good friends here have all got video cameras. One of you please save the tape for me so I can listen to his speech later, because I can't miss my flight, but I do want to hear a Swamiji talking about what true Hinduism is. I am convinced that if Swami Vivekananda were to come to today's India, he would be the same target of these gundas that Swami Agnivesh has been. They would also be bringing engine oil to throw on his face. They would also be trying to knock him down on the street, because Swami Vivekananda would be saying, respect people. He would be saying, understand, humanity is most important. People came to him during a drought when people were dying of starvation in one area and said, you have to save the cows. And Swami Vivekananda said, why save the cows? Save the people. So the man said, no. Saving the cows is our religious duty. The people, if they die, it's because they were fated to die. So Swami Vivekananda replied, well, if the people need beef to eat, then maybe the cows were fated to be slaughtered. That was his answer. It's recorded, and it's an extraordinary story, because he always put human beings ahead of anything else. He said, and we are walking through the country, through the villages as sannyasis, preaching religion. Would it not be far more useful for us sannyasis to go from village to village teaching science and mathematics? See, he always felt that human beings, their development, their progress is far more important than anything that people believe because of religious faith alone. So please understand, this is a great man whose ideas, whose openness, whose willingness to accept would not have been welcome in the India dominated by those who are in power today. So let me conclude, because I have taken more time than I intended to, and we have two good speakers coming. I just want to say once again, the importance of standing up for what we believe in is the reason all of us are in public life, I hope. If we were just cut and paste figures following a party line every time, then understandably, I think people would say, what are we going to be contributing to our political discourse and to the future of our country? Let me say also that as far as this country is concerned and the future of our country is concerned, it can only be a future in which all of us live together, progress together, move side by side together. It cannot be a country in which we are divided on the basis of religion or of communal identity, of caste, because such divisions inevitably spew bitterness, fear, and hatred. And that is what cannot but hold a country back. If we are able, like Swami Vivekananda, to accept difference, to accept each other with respect and humility, and to work together and dream the same dreams together, we will create a far, far greater India than sadly we are living through today. Once again, welcome to Tirunelveli Swami Agiresh, and I really wish you a very successful speech with this remarkable audience. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.